We begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, the last line on the Yamud. The Gemara here was discussing the pasuk, the first pasuk in Tilim, Ashrei Ye'ish, and the Gemara brought a bunch of different things about how terrible the tzanis is, a person that sits around and makes a mockery out of things. So the Gemara now will darshan the pasuk Ashrei Ye'ish, and actually a few of the psukim of the first kapitel in Tilim. Amar Rav Shmuel ben Achmeni, Amar Rav Yonasan, Ashrei ha'ish asher halach ba'atzas rishayim. Fortunate is the man that does not go in the pathways or in the ways of the plans of the wicked. Who is this referring to? Zeh Avram Avinu. This pasuk is said on Avram Avinu. Shalei halach ba'atzas anshe doira floge. They didn't follow with the idea and the whole plan of the doira floge. They built a tower to go up to heaven, whatever their plan was, different Pirushim, but Rashi here makes the cheshbon that Avram Avinu was alive in the time of Doira Floga. And it says that Avram Avinu at that time was 48 years old. And while they were trying to figure out how to rebel against Hashem, Avram Avinu was figuring out how to recognize Hashem. And that's, Avram Avinu did not follow them. They are the Rishayim, they were the wicked ones that this pasuk is speaking about. Shanema, it says in the pasuk, Hava nivna lanu ir, let's build a city, and we're going to go up and rebel against Hashem. The next part of the pasuk, Ubederach hatam lo yamad, he didn't stand in the pathway of those that are sinning. Also regarding Avram Avinu, Shelo yamad b'amidas Sdaim, he didn't stand together with the people of Sdaim, shechatam mayu, that they sinned. Shanema, the pasuk says, Va'anshe Sdaim, roim v'chatam l'Shem ha'ed, they were bad and they sinned. And so even though Lot, when Avram and Lot separated, Lot chose to go to Sdaim. And Avram Avinu was very close to that area, but nevertheless he stayed away from them. And then when the pasuk says of a Moshev Leitzim lo yashav, he doesn't sit with Moshev Leitzim. This is also about Avram Shelo yashav b'Moshev anshe Plishtim. He didn't sit together with the people of Plishtim, although there was a time that Avram lived amongst them when Avram had to go with his wife Vayakar Avram be'eretz Plishtim. But nevertheless he didn't join the Leitzim. And we find in a pasuk regarding the Plishtim that they were Litzanim. Shanam, the pasuk says, this is actually a pasuk that's written much later on by the time of Shimshon HaGibar, that they were mocking and scoffing from Shimshon after they captured him. So we see that at that time the Plishtim were Litzanim, Vayisachik Lanu. So this means that by the time of Avram, their nature didn't change, they were Leitzim, and Avram did not join them. Another pasuk the Gemara darshans, this is not here in Tilim, but this is a pasuk that's similar. It's much later in Tilim. Ashrei Ish Yireis Hashem. Fortunate is the man that fears Hashem. So the Gemara darshans, Ashrei Ish. Fortunate is the man. V'loi Ashrei Isha, and not a woman. Why is this pasuk saying that only a man that's Yirei Hashem is fortunate? So Taisus here says the Gemara is medayik this pasuk because it says Ish. When it says in the beginning of Tilim Ha-Ish, the Gemara doesn't ask the question, does it mean a man and not a woman? Because when it says ha'ish, the Gemara already darshan, it means a specific person. And that's Avram Avinu. But over here though, it says ish. So does that exclude a woman? Amar Rab Amram, Amar Av, the answer is, Ashrei mi she'oise tshuva keshehu ish. Fortunate is a person that does tshuva when he's still a young man. That's what the term ish over here means. As Rashi says, Bachar. Bachar b'koicha is someone that is quick to do tshuva when he's young and doesn't wait until his old age to do tshuva. It's another famous pshat that the Rambam says based on this Gemara, that when a person does tshuva when he's young and he still has the ability to do the Aveda and he conquers his Yetzer Hara and doesn't do the Aveda, that's a real tshuva. But if a person does tshuva when he's old, when he can't even do the Aveda anymore, so that's an incomplete tshuva because he's not in a position to even do the Aveda anymore. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Omar, another pshat why it says ish, Ashrei mi shemizgaber al yitzrei ki ish. Fortunate is a man that's very strong and he overcomes his Yetzer Hara like a man. The term ish is also used as a term of strength, a gibor, as it says, Hashem ish milchama. So when a person is strong to overcome the Yetzer Hara, that's a very valuable kind of avodah. This is the concept that Rebbe speaks about it when you get a person that's kovish es yitzray. When a person is kovish es yitzray, that's more valuable than a person that doesn't have taivus and doesn't have challenges and doesn't have nisyanis and things are just smooth. The person that's strong and overpowers his Yetzer Hara, there's a big milah to this kind of avodah. The pasuk goes on to say, "B'mitzvaysav chafetz ma'od," that he desires the Hashem's mitzvahs. What is the pasuk saying? Omer Rabbi Elazar b'mitzvaysav, he desires the mitzvahs v'lo b'schar mitzvaysav, and his motivation is not the reward. And this is the Tanah, this is what it says in Pirkei Avos, that don't be like one that serves his master just for the reward. One that serves his master, not to think that he's looking for the reward that's going to come from this. He just wants to serve Hashem himself. As Rashi here says, he serves Hashem because he loves Hashem and does it for the Eibishter's sake. And the taich of the word pras means when there's a portion, when there's a chelek. So the taich of the word pras, why is it an inyan of a schar? Because really the schar of the mitzvah comes from the mitzvah itself. When a person does a mitzvah, what happens? From the very mitzvah itself, there's a revelation that comes out of the mitzvah. So even when a person wants the schar that's coming from the mitzvah itself, even that schar is not the ikr of the mitzvah. The ikr is the actual maisa mitzvah, the action of the mitzvah that the person does. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the pasuk in the beginning of Tilim, the next pasuk. Kiyim b'teiras Hashem chavtzai, the person desires only Torah. What does this mean? Amar Rav, ein adam loy mit Torah ela mimokayim sheli b'chafetz. Or maybe it's Amar Rava. What do you have over there? Again, sorry? Rebbe, okay. Amar Rebbe, ein adam loy mit Torah ela mimokayim sheli b'chafetz. A person doesn't learn Torah unless he's learning in the place where his heart desires. Shenema ki b'teiras Hashem chavtzai. That if it's what he desires to learn, then the Torah that he'll learn will stay with him. So Rashi says this means that he should learn the place that the Masechta that he's interested in learning. If he learns a different Masechta that his heart is not there, it's not going to stay with him. So the Gemara now brings what happened in connection to this. Levi v'Rab Shimon beRebbi Yasvi kamei de Rebbe. They were both sitting. There were students sitting and learning in front of Rebbe. And v'Kapaski Sidra, and they were learning psukim in Tanakh, and they finished learning a certain sefer in Tanakh. Salik Sifra, it was the end of the sefer they were learning. Now they had to choose which sefer they're going to learn after this. So Levi Amar Laisilon Mishlei. Levi said, let's learn from Sefer Mishlei. Rab Shimon beRebbi Amar Laisilon Tilim. Let's learn from Sefer Tilim. Kafye LeLevi. So Rab Shimon beRebbi that said to learn Tilim, he persuaded or he overpowered Levi. His opinion was stronger, and V'aiseh Tilim, they came and they were learning Tilim. They just started reading from Tilim. They came to the second pasuk, and it says, Kiyim b'teiras Hashem chavtzei. So Parish Rebbe, so Rebbe explained, V'amar ein adam loimed Torah elam mimokim sheli b'chafetz, that a person could only learn in a place where his heart desires. So as soon as Levi heard that, Amar Levi said, Rebbe, nasata lanu rishus labed. So you gave me permission to get up and go and learn what I wanted to learn, Mishlei, and not to stay here and join you to learn Sefer Tilim, because this is not what my heart desires. Amar Abavdimi bar Chome, kol ha'isik b'Torah. One that learns Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu oisel echafotzav. The Eibishter will fulfill his desires. Shenema ki'im b'Toras Hashem cheftzei. So the way he's darshaning the pasuk, that if you were going to be occupied in Toras, in the Hashem's Torah, then Hashem cheftzei. Hashem will do and fulfill your desires. Amar Rava said, Lo'elam yilmud adam Torah b'makim sheli b'chafetz. A person should always learn Torah in a place where his heart desires. Shenema ki'im b'Toras Hashem cheftzei. So and simply it seems that Rava is repeating the same drasha that Rebbe said before, but the Maharsha says that what Rebbe was speaking about before, like Rashi says, in the Masechta or in the area of Torah that you desire to learn. Rava is speaking about the location where a person's going to learn, or which yeshiva is he going to learn, by which Rosh Yeshiva, by who, in which location he should learn. It's a different halacha. So Rava is saying that a person also has to choose that location where he should learn. Another halacha, Rava said, in the beginning, when a person learns Torah, the Torah is Hashem's Torah. But in the end, when he learns Nikras al Shmai, the Torah becomes the person's Torah. Shenema b'Torah Hashem cheftzei. In the beginning, the pasuk says that it's the Eibishter's Torah that he desires. But then the pasuk goes on to say, it's his, the person that's learning his Torah, it's that he studies his Torah day and night. So this Gemara is the source of what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that when a person learns Torah, you become yuchad with a yichud nifla. You become completely one with the Torah, that it becomes identified as your Torah, because the person becomes one with the Torah. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that the Chas v'Shalom person takes over the Torah, and now the Torah can be his opinions, he can say whatever he wants. It's referring to the yichud that happens when a person learns Torah, and this is also the source of the halacha that Harav Shemachal al Kvaydai Kavayde Machal. How could you be Machal if the whole cover that you give him is for the Torah? Because he and the Torah become one mamish. Therefore, Ad Kedei Kach that he can be Machal on the cover of Torah. V'amar Rav, another halacha Rav said, Lo'elam yilmed adam Torah v'achar kach yega. Person learns, so first the person learns the Torah, to know Torah, to learn the Girsa, just to know all the halachas of Torah before he studies it deeply, be'iyun. V'achar kach yega. And then after he learns all the Torah, and it's shgura b'fiv, he knows that then yega, then he should be ma'ayin, to learn, to not to compare one thing to another, questions and answers, to learn deeper. Sheneva, the pasuk says, B'Torah Hashem. Here it says first a person learns Torah Hashem, and V'Hadar, and then it goes on to say B'Soirasa Yege. So first he learns Torah Hashem to learn as much Torah as possible, and then only afterwards B'Torah Yege, where he studies it deeper and he learns Torah B'Iyun. V'Amar Rav, another halacha Rav said, Lo'ilam ligres inish. A person should always learn a lot of Torah. V'Afagav d'Mishakeach, and even if a lot of what he learns he forgets. And furthermore, he says, he should learn a lot of Torah even if he doesn't know what it is that he's saying. He's not understanding what he's saying. Shanava, the pasuk says, Garsa nafshi l'sava. I learn Torah that I desire, that I want to learn. So how does he attach the word Garsa? Garsa means Garsa ksiv, v'lo ksiv tochana. Garsa means when you take kernels of wheat and you chop it into pieces, but they're still large pieces, and it's not ground properly. It doesn't say tochana, that it was ground fully to be a flour. So when a person learns Torah and you don't grind, which means you don't learn it fully, properly to understand what you're learning, but it says, nevertheless, you should even learn Torah Shebal Peh, even if he doesn't understand the Torah that he's learning. Right, so the simple pshat of what the Gemara is saying here is that even when one learns Torah Shebal Peh, even if you don't understand, it's a learning, and a person should continue learning the statements and the words of Torah Shebal Peh even without understanding at all. That's what it seemed the Gemara is saying. But from Rashi, it's mashma, and the Alter Rebbe also passes in Shulchan Aruch that when it comes to Torah Shebechsav, when you say psukim of Torah and you don't understand, it's limited Torah. But when it comes to Torah Shebal Peh, you have to understand what you're saying. So when it says over here that you should learn even without understanding, so Rashi says it means even if he doesn't understand the depths of the Torah that he's learning, but he learns Torah as much as possible, even if he doesn't fully understand it. But it doesn't mean you can just read and not understand at all. That's not the Taich, according to Rashi, at least, and according to the Alter Rebbe, la halacha. Rav Rami, huh? Yeah. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So that is his teacher is not going, even if his teacher is not going to explain it to him fully and properly, you should still continue learning the Torah. Correct. Yeah. So it doesn't mean mamish he doesn't know anything, but even if his teacher is not explaining him properly. Rava asked that regarding Torah we find the following contradiction. Here, this Gemara is going to bring a few different sukkim where you see this contradiction at the beginning or from two different sukkim. Ksiv, this is all sukkim from Mishlei. So one pasuk in Mishlei where it gives a mashal for Torah, it says al gape. When a person learns Torah, that he's like sitting on a wing of a bird, which means that he's in a place that's not steady, it's not permanent, like when a person sits on a wing. But Uksiv, in another pasuk in Mishlei, further there in the same place in Mishlei, it says Al Kisei. Person learns Torah is like he's sitting steady on a chair or on a throne. So why is it two different expressions regarding a person that learns Torah? The answer is Betchila Al Gape. In the beginning, when a person learns Torah, he doesn't have the Torah strongly yet, so therefore he's like he's sitting on a wing. Or another Pshat Rashi says that gape could also mean not on a wing, but like the lashon of the pasuk, begapa yavai, when a person comes alone. In the beginning, when a person learns Torah, he doesn't have students, and he's sitting and learning Torah himself. And then afterwards, he sits permanently on a chair and he's steady, or he's sitting on a chair where he has students that are learning Torah with him. Another thing, it says regarding one that learns Torah, also in Mishlei, that he's on a very high place where he is and learns Torah there. What it says in another place in Mishlei, it says Alei Derech, that he's. It's actually the same pasuk. It says first Bereish Meraim, and then it says Alei Derech, that he's on a way in a road, and that's where he has Torah. So the answer is Betchila Bereish Meraim. In the beginning, when he learns Torah, he goes away in a high place. Rashi actually explains this means that when he learns Torah, he hides. And he doesn't want people to ask him questions about what he learned because he doesn't know how to answer properly. So he learns and he hides in a place where he doesn't have to be answerable. But in the end, when he learns and he knows Torah properly and he can paskin halachis, so he's there, available on the road to answer questions to anyone. Ula Rami, Ula asked that it says regarding Teire Ksiv, the pasuk says, Shesei mayim mibayrech, drink the waters of Teire from your cistern, which means that it's water that's being stored, but the water that's there is limited. But Uksiv, another pasuk, it says, that same pasuk actually continues and says, V'noizlim mitoich be'erach, that the Teire flows from your well, which is a wellspring that the water comes without limit. So the answer is, in the beginning a person learns Teire, and the water that he has of Teire is limited, and then in the end he has the unlimited koyach of Teire. Which means eventually a person learns Teire, you get the Ein Sof, the Eibishter, the Ein Sof of the Eibishter that's in the Teire. Amar Rave, Amar Rav Schreire, Amar Rav Huna. What's the meaning of the pasuk in Mishlei where it says, Hoin mehevel yimat, a person that has a big wealth, but if he uses it for nonsense, so then yimat, his wealth all decreases. But v'kayvetz al yad, but a person that's careful to gather little by little money and he holds it, so the yarba will have a lot of money, he'll have a lot of riches. This is a mashal for Teire. If a person learns Teire and he learns it like large bundles, which means he learns too much at a time, and he doesn't review Teire properly, and he doesn't understand it properly, so then mismayit, the Teire that he learns, he'll forget it, and he'll have nothing. But v'mkayvetz al yad, but if he learns little at a time, and he reviews, then yarbe. Then in the end he's going to have a lot, because he's taking little by little, and he's reviewing, and he's understanding, and then he'll end up with more. Now, Omar Rava said about this, Yadi Rabbana Lahamilsa, the students, the Rabbana, they know of this that was said in the name of Rav Huna, but Va'avri Allah, but they didn't listen to this. Nevertheless, they learn a lot of Torah, and even without reviewing properly. Now, what's the reason, Taka? So the Marsha here says that what Rava said before, Garsa Nafshi L'Sava, that pasuk Garsa, that even if you don't grind the Torah properly and you're learning and not fully understanding and you're learning a lot, argues on what Rav Huna said. So Rava is saying that the students knew of what Rav Huna said, but they disagreed, and they learned a lot of Torah. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said, Ano avidita, I did what Rav Huna said, to learn little at a time and to review and to understand. V'kayim biyadi. And the Torah, I have the Torah in my hands. That's the girsa that we have here in the Gemara. Taisus brings another girsa. Ano avarta, I was over on what Rav Huna said, and nevertheless, v'kayim biyadi. But it still worked for me. I learned a lot at a time, and I still had it in my hands. Taisus actually says not to be guided is this, but the Marsha says that from what the Gemara said before, Garsa Nafshi, that a person could learn a lot and he can still have Torah, and therefore you see that there is a machlekes about this. What's the right derech to learn Torah? Should you learn a little at a time and always review, and like this slowly gather more and more Torah, or a person can learn a lot and learn again a lot, and eventually he will have Torah.
Both of them,
it's two, yeah. So you see over here in the Gemara, two approaches. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says also Mishlei la yachrech rimiyah tzeda, which means a person that yachrech means when you want to roast something. It's a person that's a ramai, he will not be able to roast what he has hunted and has. What this means is the Gemara is darshaning the word yachrech, that it's like a combination of two words. Lo yichya v'lo yarech yamim tzayed aramai. That a person that is a hunter, but he's a ramai. So Rashi explains what this means is a person that learns a lot of Torah, and the only reason he's learning a lot of Torah is because he wants to fool people with this, that he has a lot of information and he knows a lot and he's a big Talmud Chacham, but really he doesn't fully understand what he's learning. So this person will not live a long life because he's hunting and he's showing people that he knows a lot of Torah, but he really is not learning Torah properly. Rav Sheshes darshans the pasuk that this pasuk is to be read as a tmiyah. It's read like in a question form. La yachrech remiyat seidai, and you read it as follows: Tzayed haramai yachrech. That a person which is a tzayed that hunts and he's a ramai and he's smart. He's smart about the way that he learns his Torah. So Rav Sheshes is really saying the same point, that when a person learns Torah, he has to be smart about how he learns Torah, which means to learn a little at a time and to chazer and to review and to understand. Then yachrech, then he'll have what to roast, he'll have food to eat. So Rav Sheshes is not arguing on that some point, but he's arguing on the drasha. According to Rav Sheshes, the pasuk over here, it says Remiyah. You can't say that this is referring to a person which is not reviewing, that he's a ramai, because a person like that learns Torah and forgets everything he learns is a shaitan. So therefore, Rav Shesha says that you read the pasuk b'lashon tema that a person that's a remiyah in the positive sense, meaning he approaches his learning in a smart way, then yachrech, then he'll have the food to eat and to roast to eat for himself. Yasser Avdimi, when Avdimi came, Amar Avdimi said, mashal, a mashal for this that we're speaking about, that a person should learn Torah and to try to hold on and to retain his learning, is the mashal is la'adam, a person should tzatziparim. He's hunting birds. In Meshabek Nafeh Shorishayna, if he hunts a bird and then he breaks the wings of the first bird that he caught, then he can go on and hunt and catch another bird because the first bird won't fly away. Kulam iskayim is biyade. So all the birds that he hunted and he caught will remain with him. But in Lav, if he catches a bird and then he goes to catch another bird, but meanwhile the first bird that he caught flies away, then aim iskayim is biyade. He doesn't have it in his hands. So the same thing if a person takes in a word of Torah, but then he goes on to something else, and the first word of Torah, he didn't break its wings to break through the inyan to have it with him, so then it flies away. Okay, now going back to the first kapitel in Tilim, which the Gemara is darshaning here. So the pasuk goes on to say, "V'hoya ke'eis shasel al palge mayim," like a tree that's planted by waters. So it uses the term shasel. Shasel is when you had something that was planted and you uprooted it and you replanted it somewhere else. So Amri Deber Rab Yanai, the reason it says this word ke'eis shasel, v'loy ke'eis notua, it doesn't say a tree that's planted in one place, but shasel means that you transplanted it. Kol alei mitayre merav echad. Person that learns Torah from only one teacher, he doesn't see blessing in his learning of Torah. Rav Chizda said to his students, I want to tell you something, but I'm afraid you're going to leave me and you're going to go away from me. But he told them anyways, this point here. If you learn Torah just from one teacher, you will not see a blessing in your learning. So what happened? Shavku. So they left him. And va'azl kamei de Rava. They went and learned Torah by Rava or Rabbe in another girsa, which was at the Rabbe, was the same time of Rav Chizda. So now Amalahu, they came to Rabbe. So Rabbe said to them, I think it's Rabbe or maybe Rav Chizda himself said to them, Hani mili svara. This that I said that it's valuable to learn from more than one teacher. That's when you're learning to understand svaras, to understand the deeper ideas of how you learn Torah. So that it's necessary to hear different deeper ideas of how you learn Torah from one teacher and another teacher. Avul Gemara, but on the other hand, though, just to learn the basic halachas of the Gemara, that merav echad adav, that it's actually better to learn only from one teacher. What's the reason? In order for the student not to get confused with the different versions and the different lashonis that each Rebbe had from his tradition that he taught, as you have in the Gemara all the time, Ikeda Amri. So it's better to learn from just one teacher that has the same lashon. If you're going to learn from different teachers, then the student will get confused. When it comes to svaris, deeper svaris, then it's beneficial to learn from more than one teacher to see different angles and different approaches to Torah. The pasuk in Tilim that we're talking about, it says al palge moyim, that it's by waters, but it uses the lashon of palge. What does this term palge mean? A person should divide his time and his life into three. So palge means that you're dividing your time. So divide it into three. Shlish b'mikra, third of the time to learn chumash. Shlish b'mishnah, a third of the time for mishnayis, and shlish b'talmud, and a third should be in learning Gemara. Which means that a person's life, the span of his whole lifetime, he has to divide into these thirds. So the Gemara asks, how could a person divide it this way? Does a person know how long he will live to divide his life in these three parts? Answers the Gemara, what it means is, according to Rashi, in the days of the week. That the days of the week, there are 7 days of the week, so you should divide the days of the week, 2 days for Mikra, 2 days for Mishnah, and 2 days for Gemara. And then the Mefarshim say, Shabbos is a day to review everything that he learned during the week. That's Shabbos Malan Chassidus. Very good. Okay, so that's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. But most Rishonim disagree with Rashi. Taisa says you could ask the same question the Gemara is asking regarding the whole lifespan of a person, regarding a week as well. You could say, does the person know that he's going to live out the whole week? How could he divide his week into these three parts? So therefore, the most Rishonim say, and this is the halacha also in Shulchan Aruch, that a person should divide the day. Every day should be third Mikra, third Mishnah, and a third Talmud. And it's a big discussion about this in Paiskim. The Alter Rebbe also brings in Hilchas Talmud Torah why we don't do this b'payil today. So one pshat is that this refers only to a person that hasn't yet learned a lot. In the beginning of his learning, he has to divide it in these three parts in order to gain from everything. He shouldn't just have only Mikra or only Mishnah or only Talmud, but later on, you don't necessarily have to divide it this way. But another thing that it says is that when we learn Gemara, because Gemara is Balul, Talmud Bavli is Balul from Torah and the Mishnayos and the Psuk and the Svaras of the Gemara, so if you learn a shir of Gemara, that has already these the division of these three parts in the Gemara. Weiter in Pasuk there until it says, Ashapirya yitain be'itai, he gives its fruits in its time. So Amar Rava, what does this mean? So Rava says, Imperiya yitain be'itai, if a person gives his fruit in his time, which means that a person is Mekayim, mitzvahs, the Torah that he learns, that's one pshat Rashi says, or another pshat, Pirya yitain be'itai means he has a kviyas itim l'Torah, he establishes itai, times to learn Torah, then va'aleyu lo yibal. That is the leaves on this tree will not wither away. But if he does not have peiris, if he does not establish times of learning or fulfills mitzvahs, so then ala loimid va'ala melamed, both on the one that should be learning and the one that should be teaching Torah, aleim akasav vaymer. The pasuk goes on to say, loicheno rishayim, that the rishayim that don't establish times to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, the pasuk goes on to say that they're kamaitz asher tetvanu ruach, that the wind blows them away. Amarav Abe, Amarav Hona, Amarav. Ma'idich what's the meaning of the pasuk where it says, Kirabim chalalam mipila, that there are many that died from him. Who is this referring to? Zet Talmud shalayigia lohira. This refers to a student that hasn't yet gotten to the point where he's able to paskin halachis, umayra, and he still goes ahead and paskins, even when he doesn't know. So this is Rabim chalalam mipila because he causes many people to stumble with his with the psakdin that's not correct. And many are those that he kills. This refers to a student that did come to the point where he's able to paskin and teach, and he does not paskin. Now, what's that age that he comes to that he should be able to paskin? Ad mem shnin, at the age of 40. So Rashi here clarifies when it says mem shnin mishanayla, which means literally when a person is 40 years old. But there are other Rishonim that disagree with this and say that when it says Arbaim Shnin, it means Arbaim Shnin from when he began learning Torah. And he was learning Torah for 40 years. So the Gemara asks in this, but Vaha, Rave, Oidi, Rave did Paskin Halachis even if he was younger than 40, because Rave passed away. His whole life was only until the age of 40. So Rave taught and Paskin before he was 40 years old. And says the Gemara, Hasam Bishavin. Over there, Rave, he and the greatest Talmud Chacham in his city were on the same level, so therefore Rave, even at a younger age, came to that level that he was able to paskin halachas. Right to the pasuk until him says, "Va'aleyu lo yibal," that the leaves will not wither away. Omer Avacha bar Ada Omer Rav, Omer lo Omer Avacha bar Abba Omer Rav, Omer Rav Amnuna Omer Rav. Shafila, what we learn from the pasuk about the leaves of the tree is Shafila sichas cholen shel Talmud Chacham tzrichim Talmud or tzrichim limud. That by Talmud Chacham, even just as when he speaks things that are not directly Torah, is also something that has in it Torah that you have to learn from it. And so Rashi here says that you can learn from the way they speak, the words, the Lashon Nekiyah, and you can learn from the language of a Talmud Chacham. Shanamar va'aleyu lo yibad. So even not only the fruits, which is the Torah, but even just the leaves, that itself is it's not what the main thing of the tree is. That as well you can learn from by a Talmud Chacham. Then it says in the pasuk v'chol asher yaseh, everything that he will do yatzliach, will be successful. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, so Rabbi Shua ben Levi said about this davar, this point kasav b'Torah, says it already in the Torah, Mishani ben Nevi'im, and it says it again in Navi, or Mishulish b'Ksuvim, and it says it again in Ksuvim. Kolaisik b'Torah, one that learns a lot of Torah, nuchasav matzlichin. His possessions, his money will all be successful. Matzlichin loy. So whether this means physically, begashmias, that a person will have a lot of money, a lot of parnasa, or it means beruchnias, regarding olam haba, as it says in the Farshim. Kasav b'Torah, in the Torah it says, D'chsev, Shmartem es divrei abris azayis vasisam oisam laman taskilu es kol shatasan. So that you'll taskilu, you'll be successful, you'll have the proper wisdom in everything that you do. Shani b'Nevi'im, then it says in Nevi'im, D'chsiv L'yomish Sefer HaTorah Zeh Mipicha, V'agisa Bo Yomim V'Layla, L'man Tishma Lasas K'chol HaKosav Boi, Ki Oz Tatzliach Es Drachecha V'Oz Taskel. That's when you'll have success, and you'll have the right understanding of what to do. And Mishulish B'Ksuvim, D'chsiv, as the pasuk here says, Kiyim B'Teiras Hashem Cheftzoi, B'Serasa Yega Yomim V'Layla, he learns Torah day and night, and V'hoya Keitz Shasal Pal Gemayim Asher Pira Yitim B'Yitoi V'Aleyu L'Yiboil, and V'choil Asher Yaseh Yatzliach. And all of his ways, whatever he does, will be successful. So in connection to this, the Gemara brings Machriz Rabbi Alexandri. Rabbi Alexandri announced, Man boy chaya, man boy chaya. Who wants life? Who wants life? So Kanov v'asi kula alma legabei. So many people came and gathered to him. Omri lei, they said to him, Havlam chaya, give us life. So Amalahu, he told them, it says in Tillim, Mi ya'ish ha'chafetz chayim v'geimer. Who desires life, what should you do? Hold back your mouth of speaking negative things. And then the pasuk goes on to say, Sur meira v'aseh tov. So now Shema Yoima Adam, a person will say, as long as I keep my mouth shut and I don't speak negative things, so I can go and sink into a sleep. So let me just sleep all day, and I'm not going to speak anything negative, and that I'll have life. So the pasuk goes on to say, no, sur meira va'aseh tov. When it says aseh tov, what does that mean? Ve'ein tov ela Torah. Tov means that use out your time to learn Torah. Shenema, as the pasuk says, ki lekach tov nasati lechem torasi al tazev. Torah is the good thing that a yid acquires to use out his time for. Okay, this is the end of the Agadata on this Inyan. Now we go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah was speaking about a person that is participating to build a bathhouse, that it's allowed. And then the Mishnah went on to say, but higia lekipa, if in this structure where they build this bathhouse, he comes to a place where they build a dome, which is a makim, shamamidim ba'avedis kachavim, and over there, this dome, there's a place where they put an image of an Avoda Zara, so there, you're not allowed to participate in building this. So Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Lazar said, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, so we have it in our guesses, some do not on our guidance this, that Rabbi Yechanan's name, that in Bana, if he did build this Avoda Zara, scharoi mutter. The money that he earned from this construction, that he built this Avoda Zara, he's allowed to have no from this money. Now, so the Gemara asks on this, Pshita, the fact that he's allowed to have no from this schar that he earned, that this money that he earned from building this, it's pashut that he's allowed to have no from this. And what's the reason for this? This is actually going to be discussed by Arichis later in the Masechta. And the Gemara here brings Bekitzer. This is Mishamshei Avodas Kechavim. There is two different things. There's when a person builds an Avoda Zara itself, and there's the money he earns from that. And then there's when a person builds something which is not an Avoda Zara itself, but it's a house for Avoda Zara, something that will be Mishamish an Avoda Zara. So over here he's building this dome with this image of Avoda Zara. It's not Avoda Zara itself. It's something which is going to serve Avoda Zara. And what's the halacha? Mishamshei Avodas Kechavim. When someone builds something which is only going to be used for the Avoda Zara, Bein Rabbi Shmuel, Bein Rabbi Akiva, both according to both opinions, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, as will be discussed later in the Masechta and Daf Nun Aleph, Einon Asuren Achi Yavdu. It's not asur to use the hana from it until it's actually used to serve the Avoda Zara. In this case, though, this person is making a new construction. He's building this kippah, which will have a shimush for Avoda Zara, but there was no use for Avoda Zara yet, and therefore the money that he earned by building this, in everybody's opinion, is mutter. So why? What's the chiddush of Rabbi Lazar that comes and says this, that it's mutter? So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah answers that Rabbi Lazar actually said this in something else. This is actually, he's saying this regarding a person that builds an Avoda Zara itself, that the schar of this Avoda Zara, he could have a no from this. That was his chiddush. But the Gemara says, well, this is actually something that not everybody agrees with this. So this is the same machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, the Avoda Zara of a yid, it's asur immediately, even to have a no from it, even before it was used as an actual Avoda Zara. But when it comes to an Avoda Zara of a guy, it's not asur to have a no from it, of it, until it's actually worshipped as an Avoda Zara. So shapir. So according to that opinion, according to Rabbi Shmuel, that's what Rabbi Lazar is coming to say here, that even an Avoda Zara itself, if it wasn't yet used as an Avoda Zara, and he earned money from building it, he can have an hour from it. But according to Rabbi Kiva says that the opposite, that the Avoda Zara of a goy asura miyad. You're not allowed to have a no from it immediately, even before it was used. So the what can we say? So over here, Rabbi Elazar is saying that he built an Avoda Zara of a guy, and he's saying that he could have a no from the money that he earned from building this, even though it wasn't used yet. But according to Rabbi Kiva, you're not allowed to have a no from this. So Ella Omar Rabbi Bar Ule, so Rabbi Bar Ule explains, what Rabbi Elazar is saying is only applying to what we're talking about over here. When a person is building Avoda Zara. The machlokes of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva was regarding a person that is having a no from an existence of an Avoda Zara that wasn't worshipped yet. Here though, we're talking about a person that's building an Avoda Zara. So lenitzcha ela b'machush achrein. So when a person builds the Avoda Zara is not complete until the very last bang that completes it. Before the last bang, it's not yet an Avoda Zara. So it's the last bang that makes it an Avoda Zara. So therefore the Gemara explains, when is it actually in existence of an Avoda Zara? Gemar Malacha. Only when it's complete, at the very last bang that he gives. Now the aim is have Gemar Malacha b'makish achrei. By the very last bang, that's when it becomes complete. But now the thing is, makish achrein, that very last bang, less b'shava pruta. There's no value of a shava pruta in creating this Avoda Zara. So therefore it comes out that he could have no from the money that he earned in building this Avoda Zara. Because everything that he did, all the money that he's earning from building this Avoda Zara till the last point, it's not yet a mitzvah of an Avoda Zara. So that he could have no from. The very last bang is not even a shava pruta b'chlal. So therefore he could have no from money that he earns of building an Avoda Zara. So Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva were talking about the existence of an Avoda Zara before it was worshipped. Could you have a no from it? But over here it's talking about building it, and that is not a problem. And the Gemara explains, let's just conclude, the Gemara explains that what does this mean? Alme, from here I see, what does Rabbi Elazar hold when a person is hired to do work? That Kasava, Rabbi Elazar says, Yashna l'schiros mitchila va'atzaif. When a person is hired to do a job, how do we understand the obligation of paying the person that's doing this job? One way to understand it is that when a person is hired to do a job, until the end, until his job is complete, the one that hired him doesn't owe him a penny. When you finish it, it's that last bang when it's done, that's when you become chayiv, the employer becomes chayiv to pay him the full pay. Now, if you would hold that, so then over here, when he's completing the Avoda Zara and he gives the last bang is when he's chayiv to pay him for the whole Avoda Zara. So it comes out that by that last bang, he's actually earning the money for the whole Avoda Zara, which is much more than a shava pruta, so that would be aser. Rabbi Elazar says that it's allowed, holds that when a person is doing a job, you have to pay him for every step, every little step that he does, you have to pay him another penny or another half a penny, and it accumulates at the end. You pay him b'payil at the end, but really you're paying him all along the way. So therefore, when it comes to the very last bang, it's less than a shava pruta. And everything that you have to pay him before is before it's an Avoda Zara. So therefore, he could have a no from this money that he earns from building this Avoda Zara.
Rabbi, you could have him